What's going on, guys? In this presentation here, I want to talk about fitting in. And I'm sure you guys probably tried to fit in your younger days. And we all know what it's like trying to fit in, trying to be part of the in crowd, right? We all know what that's like. Everybody wants to fit in. Everybody want to be part of the in crowd. Everybody want to be part of the cool people. And you really can relate to fitting in like in your middle school, high school days. How many of you guys can relate to like when you were in middle school, when you're in high school? How many of you guys can relate to that? Trying to fit in, wanting to be part of, wanting to be like everybody else. Because I think everybody went through that phase, you know, wanting to fit in. Because when I was in middle school, when I was in high school, I went through that phase as well, wanting to fit in. Um, I think that's a normal thing that a lot of young people go through. But if I had any word of advice to give about youngsters fitting in, I would say don't let no one persuade you to do something that you know is wrong. You know, especially in the urban community, a lot of young guys, they want to fit in. They want to be part of the cool crowd. They want to get the girls and they want to fit in with everybody else. But it's not always good to fit in. Sometimes it's good to be square. I realize, especially now that I'm older, being square is not necessarily a bad thing. Being square can keep you out of prison. It can keep you from getting killed. It can keep you out of the madness. Now, you might be persecuted for being square. You may not get the women being square, but who cares? Because fitting in with the in crowd can cost you your life sometime. It could cause you to end up in prison for the rest of your life trying to fit in. It's not always good trying to fit in or be like everybody else. But see, when you're a teenager, you don't realize that. You want to be like, the other kids. You want to dress like the other kids. I never forget back when I was in high school, I had a dude tell me, you try too hard to fit in. But I think everyone wanted to fit in. Because when you're in middle school and high school, you're worried about how people perceive you. You want to you want to be desired by females, especially at those ages. So I think everyone goes through that phase where they want to fit in, they want to be cool, they want to be accepted. Cuz let's be real here. Everybody wants to be accepted, you know? But as you grow into adulthood and as you become an adult, you understand that fitting in is not always the best. It's not always the best idea. It's not always the best decision. Because I used to think in my younger days that I had to adapt to the culture. I used to try to, I used to think that I got to be like the other guys. But as you grow into adulthood, you realize that you don't got to fit in. But in middle school, high school, especially at those adolescent ages, you don't realize that you don't got to fit in. It's okay to be your own person, you know? And what's so sad about, the culture, especially in the urban community, what's so sad about our culture is that you have to identify with things that are negative in order to be seen as real. So as a brother, you have to identify with things that are negative in order to be seen as a real man, in order to be respected. And when I say being respected, I'm talking about being respected by other guys, being respected by females. As a black man, you have to identify with things that are negative in order to be seen as a real man, in order to be seen as masculine, in order to be seen as dominant. So, in those middle school and high school days, you feel that pressure on you. And I know I wasn't the only one who felt that pressure on me, because I used to try to sag. I used to put aluminum foil in my mouth, put bandanas on my head, tying them on my head like the hot boys. You feel that pressure, especially as an adolescent, that, you got to fit in, you got to adapt. And I think everyone went through that phase. I don't think it was just me, you know. And this is one of the reasons to why, if I was a parent and if I had children, I would not allow my children to go to an urban school, because I don't want them to feel that they got to adapt to the culture. I don't want them to feel like they got to assimilate to what everyone else is doing in order to be accepted, in order to have friends, in order to be seen as cool. This is why I'd want my kids to go to private school, especially in their middle school and high school years. You know, elementary school, those days are easy. You're not really experiencing any real peer pressure, because my elementary school days were a breeze. Life didn't get ugly until middle school, because middle school, that's when you start liking girls. That's when your Johnson start, you know, perking up. Middle school, that's when you start going through puberty. That's why I always say my life went downhill soon as I started liking females. That's when my life turned upside down. And that's why, if I was a parent, I would send my kids, especially once they hit puberty, those middle school and those high school years, I wouldn't want my kids to go to an urban school, because I don't want them to be exposed to that. I don't want them thinking that I gotta be a thug, I gotta be a gangster, I gotta fit in with the boys, I gotta sag my pants off my behind. I don't want my kids to go through that. I don't want them to feel like I gotta adapt to the culture. That's why, if I was a parent, I would send my kids to private school. I wouldn't want my kids to go to an urban school if I was a parent, especially in their teen years, because those are some very crucial years. Those are years where, that peer pressure is at an all-time high. Do a thumbs up in the chat if you agree. Those middle school, those high school years, those are some very crucial years, because those are the years where that peer pressure is at an all-time high. It really is. And those are the years where you want to fit in, and you're so worried about what other people think of you. And I realize now that I'm grown that if people perceive you in a negative light, so be it. If people think you a cornball, a square, so be it. You don't gotta fit in. You could just ride your own lane. You don't gotta dress like everybody else. You don't have to assimilate to what everyone else is doing. But see, you can't tell a teenager that, because at those ages, they don't understand that. They don't understand having a mind of your own as a teenager. Because back when I was a teenager, I didn't understand having a mind of your own. I didn't understand doing your own thing. I felt when I was a teen that I got to be like all these other ninjas. I got to sag my pants off my behind and put a do-rag on my head and walk around and act like I'm a gangster. And that's why I say, if I was a parent, I would not send my kids to no public school, especially in the middle school and high school years. I just wouldn't do it. But the message in this presentation is pretty much just saying, don't think that you gotta fit in. Don't think that you gotta assimilate to the culture, or that you gotta assimilate to what everyone else is doing. And this message here is definitely for the youngsters. This message here is for youngsters that's like middle school, high school. That's what this message is for. Like, I understand, as a teenager, you feel that you gotta fit in. But as you grow into adulthood, you'll look back on those adolescent days and realize, I didn't have to fit in. I could have just did my own thing. But when you're a teenager, you don't see that. When you're a teenager, you feel you got to be like everybody else. You feel you got to dress like everybody else. And I don't know if the peer pressure is this intense in other ethnic groups. But I can speak for the urban community. You know, as a young black man, especially when you're a teenager, that peer pressure is at an all-time high in our community, especially in those middle school and high school days. Because Lord knows I went through it in those days, wanting to fit in, you know. That's why I say urban culture is just terrible. It's a terrible culture because that peer pressure is very high in those days. And that's why I say, you guys tell me your stories. I know I'm not the only one who went through that. Especially, as a teenager, feeling like you got to blend in. You got to fit in with all the other kids. I know I'm not the only one that went through that. But you guys let me know what you think about fitting in. Because once you get grown, you realize you don't got to fit in. And now that I'm grown, I don't put a lot of value in what people think of me anymore. If people feel negatively about you, what can you do about it? I mean, if people perceive you in a negative light, if people think you're a square, they think you're dumb, what can you do? There's nothing you can do to change it. But once you become an adult, you understand that there's nothing you can do with how people perceive you. If people feel negatively about you, that's just the way it is. You can't change how people perceive you. All you can do is just live your life and do your thing. But that's pretty much the message. And that's all I can tell anyone, But once you grown, you don't put a lot of stock in what people think of you no more. But I remember when I was a teenager, I used to really care a lot about how people perceived me in those days. But once you grown, you don't care about how people perceive you because you realize that it's nothing you can do. If a person feels some kind of way about you, what can you do? Nothing. It is what it is. But you guys have a great day. Talk to you soon. Peace out.